My son was in a coma, and the woman in the bed next to him had not had a single visitor in 3 days, so I brought her soup from the cafeteria because nobody should be alone in a place like this. I sat by my son's side for 72 hours straight, watching the monitors beep and praying to a God I had not spoken to since my wife died. When Justin finally opened his eyes, I expected him to ask for water or ask where he was, but he did not. He looked at me with a clarity that terrified me and asked if I had secured the blue folder from his car. Before I could answer, his wife Megan stepped out to take a call, and the old woman in the next bed reached through the curtain. Her grip was iron strong for someone so frail. She pulled me close until I could smell the stale hospital coffee on her breath, and she whispered the words that would save my life. "Run away from him," she hissed. "He is not asleep, Bill. He is waiting for you to fall into the trap." That was the moment I realized the car accident was not the tragedy. The tragedy was what my son had planned for me if he survived. Before I tell you how a father takes down his own flesh and blood, let me know where you are listening from in the comments. If you have ever had to choose between your heart and your survival, hit like and subscribe. The smell of the emergency room at 2 in the morning is a mix of bleach and desperate prayers. My shoes squeaked on the linoleum floor as I ran toward the reception desk. They were old leather loafers I had bought 10 years ago at a discount outlet, and the sole was coming loose on the left foot, but I did not care. My name is Bill Foster, and I am 68 years old, and 40 minutes ago I received the call that every parent dreads. Your son has been in a severe accident on OTSI 95. The receptionist looked up at me and I saw her eyes scan my frayed windbreaker and my gray hair, and then flick down to my worn-out shoes. She made a judgment right there. She saw a pensioner who probably lived on Social Security and clipped coupons. She did not see a retired forensic accountant who had spent 40 years hunting down corporate fraud. She did not see the man who had lived below his means every single day so that his only son could have a debt-free start in life. "We need to process the admission paperwork, Mr. Foster," she said, without urgency, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Given the severity of the trauma and the specialized neurosurgery required, the hospital policy requires a deposit if the insurance verification is pending. I slammed my hand on the counter, not out of anger, but out of a need for speed. "How much?" I asked. Her eyes widened slightly. $20,000, she said, expecting me to crumble or ask for a payment plan. I did not blink. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my checkbook. I wrote the date. I wrote the amount. My handwriting was steady. I signed my name, William Foster, with the same precision I used when I signed off on audit reports that sent corrupt CEOs to federal prison. I tore the check out and slid it across the counter. "Get him into surgery," I said. Her mouth opened slightly, but she took the check. She did not know that the check represented my roof replacement fund, but roofs can be patched. Sons cannot. I walked toward the waiting area and the adrenaline began to fade, replaced by a cold knot in my stomach. The hospital was a level 1 trauma center bustling with controlled chaos. Doctors in blue scrubs rushed past with clipboards. Gurneys rattled down the hall carrying people having the worst nights of their lives. I found a plastic chair in the corner of the waiting room and sat down. My knees cracked. I felt every year of my age in that moment. I looked across the room and saw her. Megan, my daughter-in-law. She was standing by the vending machine. She was wearing a silk blouse and designer jeans that probably cost more than my first car. Her makeup was perfect even at this hour. She was not crying. She was not pacing. She was typing furiously on her phone. I watched her for a full minute. A forensic accountant looks for anomalies, patterns that do not fit. A grieving wife should be a mess. A terrified wife should be asking the nurses for updates every 5 minutes. Megan looked like she was negotiating a contract. She finally looked up and saw me. She did not run to hug me. She walked over slowly, sliding her phone into her expensive purse. "Oh, Bill," she said. "You made it." Her voice was flat. "How is he?" I asked. "They are prepping him now," she said, checking her diamond watch. "The doctor said it is a cranial hematoma. They need to relieve the pressure." She said the medical terms correctly, but without feeling, like she was reading a grocery list. A police officer approached us. He was young, maybe 30, holding a clear plastic bag labeled with an evidence tag. "Family of Justin Foster?" he asked. I stood up. "I am his father. This is his wife." The officer nodded and handed the bag to me. "These are the personal effects recovered from the vehicle. We found his wallet, his phone, and some loose papers that were scattered in the cabin during the rollover. There was no alcohol involved, Mr. Foster. It looks like he fell asleep at the wheel." I took the bag. It was heavy. Inside, I saw Justin's wallet made of Italian leather, his platinum watch with the cracked face, and a stack of papers that were crumpled and stained with coffee. I sat back down and opened the bag. I wanted to feel close to him. I wanted to see what he was doing before the crash. I pulled out the papers. My breath caught in my throat. These were not work papers. Justin was a creative director at an ad agency. I expected storyboards or marketing briefs. What I held in my hand was a copy of the deed to my house, my paid-off 4-bedroom house in the suburbs. Beneath that was a printout of my retirement portfolio summary from last quarter. And beneath that was a printout of a life insurance policy in my name. My blood ran cold. Why was my son driving around at 2 a.m. with a dossier on my finances? I looked up at Megan. She was back on her phone, her back turned to me. I looked closer at the deed. There were sticky notes on it. One pointed to the signature line. Another note in handwriting I did not recognize said simply, "Quick sale value, $650,000. I felt a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with the hospital smell. I shoved the papers back into the bag just as a nurse approached us. "Family of Justin Foster," she called out. We both stood up. Megan was faster. "Is he awake?" she asked. "No," the nurse said. "He is out of surgery and stable, but we have an administrative issue." She looked uncomfortable. "We tried to run the credit card on file for the private room upgrade and the post-op deductible. The card was declined." Megan stopped. "That is impossible," she snapped. "That is a black Amex. There is no limit." The nurse held her ground. "It came back declined code insufficient funds. We tried the backup card on file as well. Declined. Unless we can get a valid payment method, we cannot move him to the private recovery suite. He will have to go to the general ward." Megan turned red. Her composure cracked for the first time, not out of grief, but out of embarrassment. She looked at me. "Bill, do you have your card? Justin must have forgotten to transfer funds." I looked at her. I looked at the bag in my hand containing the deed to my house. I looked at the nurse. "I will take care of it," I said. "But he goes to the general ward. A private room is $3,000 a night. He does not need a view. He needs a doctor." Megan gasped. "Bill, you cannot be serious. He is a creative director. He needs privacy." I looked her dead in the eye. "If he has no money in his account, Megan, he has no privacy. I paid the $20,000 for the surgery. I am not paying for a hotel experience. Put him in the general ward." 2 hours later, I was sitting in a plastic chair next to bed number 4 in the general recovery unit. It was a large room separated by thin beige curtains. To my left was a teenager with a broken leg watching videos on his phone without headphones. To my right was a lump under a thin blanket. Justin was pale. His head was wrapped in bandages. Tubes ran in and out of his arms. He looked so small. For a moment, the anger about the papers faded, and I just saw my little boy, the one I taught to ride a bike, the one I held when he scraped his knee. I reached out and took his hand. His skin was cold. Megan had left an hour ago. She said she needed to go home to get fresh clothes and shower. I knew she went home to check the bank accounts. She was panicked. I sat there, in the silence of the ward, listening to the rhythmic whoosh of the ventilator. The curtain to the right rustled. I looked over. An elderly woman was staring at me. She must have been 75. Her hair was thin and white, and her face was a map of deep wrinkles. She looked frail, like a strong wind could blow her away. She was propped up on 3 pillows, and her eyes were sharp, alert, and incredibly sad. "I am sorry," I whispered. "Did we wake you?" She shook her head slowly. "No," she said. Her voice was like dry leaves scraping together. "I do not sleep much. Too much noise." I nodded. "I am Bill. That is my son, Justin." She looked at Justin and then back at me. "He has good shoes," she said. "Expensive." I looked down at the bag of Justin's belongings tucked under the chair. "Yes," I said. "He likes nice things." She looked at my shoes, the ones with the loose sole. "You pay for them?" she asked. It was not an accusation, it was a statement of fact. I sighed. Sometimes parents do what they have to do. She closed her eyes for a moment. "You are a good father," she said. "I see you here. You have not moved." The wife she left fast. I felt a strange connection to this stranger. "Agnes," she said without opening her eyes. "My name is Agnes." "Nice to meet you, Agnes," I said. "Are you hungry? It is almost breakfast time. The cafeteria opens in 10 minutes. I can get you something." She opened her eyes and they were wet. "Nobody brings me anything," she whispered. "My daughter lives in Arizona. She is busy." I stood up. My back popped. I walked down to the cafeteria and bought 2 cups of oatmeal and 2 coffees. I brought one back to Agnes. She ate it slowly, her hands shaking slightly as she held the spoon. We sat in silence for a while, just 2 old people watching a young man sleep. It was peaceful until Justin began to stir. The monitor's beep rate increased. His eyelids fluttered. I leaned forward, gripping the bed rail. "Justin," I said softly. "Justin, can you hear me?" His eyes opened. They were unfocused at first, rolling around the room. Then they locked onto me. I expected confusion. I expected pain. Instead, I saw a flash of panic. "Dad," he croaked. His voice was dry and scratchy. "Dad, the car." I squeezed his hand. "You crashed, son. You are in the hospital. You are safe." He tried to sit up but winced and fell back. "No," he gasped. "Not the car. The folder. The blue folder on the passenger seat." "Did you get it?" My heart hammered against my ribs. The blue folder. The one with my financial life inside. Why was that his first thought? Why not Megan? Why not his own legs? I kept my face neutral. A forensic accountant never reveals what he knows. "I have your things, Justin," I said calmly. "Everything is safe." He let out a breath and closed his eyes. "Thank God," he whispered. "Do not look at it, Dad. Just keep it safe. It is work stuff. Confidential client data. If I lose it, I lose my job." It was a lie. A smooth, practiced lie. I had seen the papers. There were no clients. Just me. I was the client. I was the target. "Okay, Justin," I said. "Rest now." Just then Megan burst through the curtains. She had changed into a new outfit and reapply her lipstick. "Justin," she cried, rushing to the other side of the bed. "Oh my God, you are awake. I was so worried." Justin looked at her, and the look that passed between them was not love. It was a signal. "Did you call him Justin?" asked her, ignoring her tears. Megan nodded, her eyes flicking to me, and then back to Justin. Yes. He is on his way. He said everything is ready. Who is on his way? I asked. Justin put on a mask of pain, a grimace that looked a little too theatrical. My lawyer dad. Just for insurance stuff. You know how it is, with the accident and liability. I need to protect us. I nodded slowly. Okay. I will step out and let you two talk. I need to stretch my legs anyway. I stood up and grabbed my jacket. I did not grab the bag of evidence. I left it conspicuously under the chair. I wanted to see what they would do. I walked out of the curtained area, but I did not go far. I stood just outside the range of their vision, pretending to tie my shoe. I strained my ears. I heard rustling. I heard the zipper of the evidence bag. Is it here? Megan whispered, her voice sharp and devoid of the concern she had shown seconds ago. Yes, Justin hissed. It is all here. The deed. The account numbers. Did the old man see it? I do not think so, Megan said. He is too stupid. He just paid the deposit without asking questions. He thinks you are a victim. Good, Justin said. Get the papers ready. When the lawyer gets here, we make him sign. He is shaken up. He is guilty about the accident. We use that. We tell him I need long-term care, and I cannot manage it without his power of attorney. Once he signs, we own him. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I stood up slowly, my knees shaking. I walked away down the hall to the vending machine. I stared at the reflection in the glass. I saw an old man, a fool, a mark. I had spent my life protecting companies from embezzlement, and I had failed to protect myself from my own family. I bought a bottle of water just to have something to do with my hands. I walked back to the room. I needed to know more. I needed a plan. As I approached the bed, Megan stood up. Bill, she said with a fake smile, I need to go meet the lawyer in the lobby to sign him in. Can you stay with Justin? Of course, I said. She brushed past me, leaving a cloud of expensive perfume. I sat back down in the chair. Justin was feigning sleep again. Suddenly, I felt a hand on my arm. It was bony and cold. I turned. Agnes had pulled back the curtain separating our beds. She was leaning over the rail, her face inches from mine. Her eyes were wide with terror. I looked at the door to make sure Megan was gone. Agnes tightened her grip on my forearm. Her fingernails dug into my skin. Run, she whispered. The word was barely a breath, but it hit me like a scream. Run away from him, Bill. He is not asleep. I saw him watching you when you were at the vending machine. He was texting on his phone. I looked at Justin. He lay perfectly still. Agnes pulled me closer. I used to work as a clerk in the family court, she hissed rapidly. I know what I heard. They are not talking about insurance. They are talking about a guardianship. They are going to declare you incompetent, Bill. They are going to say that you are too old to manage your money because of the shock. If you sign that paper, you lose everything. You lose your house, you lose your money, you lose your freedom. I stared at her. My mind flashed back to the declined credit card. The debt. The desperation. It all made sense. They didn't just want a loan. They wanted it all. Agnes let go of my arm and laid back down, pulling the sheet up to her chin, just as Justin shifted in the bed and let out a fake moan. Dad, he mumbled, keeping his eyes closed. Are you there? I looked at the son I had raised, the boy I had loved more than my own life. And then I looked at Agnes, the stranger who had just handed me a weapon. I took a deep breath. I am here, son, I said, my voice steady. I am right here. But in my head, I was already calculating. I was already planning. I was not his father anymore. I was the auditor. And I was about to start the most important investigation of my life. I stood up and patted Justin's shoulder. I will be right back, son, I said. I need to use the restroom before the lawyer gets here. I walked out of the room, but I did not go to the restroom. I walked straight to the nurse's station. I need to see my son's chart, I told the nurse. And I need the name of the lawyer who just called the main switchboard asking for Justin Foster's room number. The nurse looked at me hesitant. I smiled the warm, harmless smile of a confused old man. Please, dear. I just want to write him a thank you note. She smiled back. Of course, Mr. Foster. I looked at the screen as she typed. I memorized the name. I memorized the law firm. And then I walked out the front door of the hospital into the cold night air. I had work to do. My son wanted a war. He had no idea he had just declared it on a veteran. I walked out of the hospital sliding doors, and the cold night air hit me like a slap in the face. It should have woken me up, but I felt like I was walking into a nightmare that was just beginning. My hands were shaking, not from the cold, but from the conversation I had just had with a total stranger named Agnes. I got into my 10-year-old Ford Taurus, and the engine sputtered before turning over. It was a reliable car, a sensible car, the kind of car a man drives when he wants to save money for his son's future. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Agnes had told me to run, but I could not run. I had to know the truth. And in my line of work, the truth is never found in words. It is found in the numbers. I drove toward the city skyline, toward the glitzy district where Justin lived in a penthouse that I had only visited twice. He always told me he was too busy for visitors or that the place was a mess. Now I knew those were just excuses. I needed to see what was behind the curtain. I needed to perform the most painful audit of my career. The drive took 20 minutes, and every mile felt like a betrayal. When I pulled up to the curb of the luxury high-rise, the valet looked at my car with disdain. I ignored him. I walked straight to the front desk. The concierge was a young man with slicked-back hair who looked like he would rather be anywhere else. I need the key to Justin Foster's apartment, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I am his father. He is in the hospital. The young man barely looked up from his tablet. I cannot do that, sir. Tenant privacy policy. Unless you are on the lease or have a key fob, I cannot let you up. I expected this. This was the first barrier. I leaned on the counter and let my shoulders slump. I made my eyes water, a trick I learned years ago when interviewing reluctant witnesses. Please, son, I said, letting my voice crack. He is in a coma. The doctors say he might not make it through the night. He wanted his rosary beads. They are on his nightstand. If he dies without them, I will never forgive myself. The concierge hesitated. He looked at my gray hair and my worn-out jacket. He saw a grieving father, not a forensic investigator. He sighed and reached into a drawer. I can take you up, he said, but I have to watch you. You can grab the rosary and then we leave. Thank you, I whispered. Thank you so much. The elevator ride was silent. When we reached the 42nd floor, the hallway smelled of expensive air freshener and old secrets. The concierge unlocked the door and pushed it open. I stepped inside, and the first thing that hit me was the smell. It did not smell like a home. It smelled like stale pizza and anxiety. The lights were off. I flipped the switch and the living room flooded with light. The concierge stayed by the door checking his watch. I walked to the bedroom pretending to look for the rosary. I found a string of beads in a drawer that I had given Justin for his confirmation 20 years ago. I held them up. Found them, I said. The concierge nodded. Okay, let's go. As we walked back to the door, I stopped. Oh my God, I said, patting my pockets. My heart medication. I must have left it in the bathroom when I washed my hands. Go ahead down, son. I will be right behind you. I just need to grab the pills. The concierge looked annoyed, but he had already broken protocol by letting me in. Just make it quick, he said. Do not touch anything else. He stepped out, and the heavy door clicked shut. I waited until I heard the elevator ding and the doors slide close. Then I locked the deadbolt from the inside. I was alone. Now the real work began. I turned back to the living room. On the surface, it was magnificent. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a massive leather sectional sofa, a 60-inch television, art on the walls that looked abstract and expensive. But I walked over to the sofa and lifted the cushion. There it was. A barcode tag stapled to the fabric. Property of Staging Solutions, LLC. I checked the television. Another tag on the back. Rented. I walked to the dining table. Rented. My son did not own any of this. He was living on a movie set. A facade designed to make people think he was a success so they would trust him with their money. Or in my case, trust him with my life. I walked into the kitchen. The granite countertops were covered in a layer of dust. I opened the refrigerator. It was almost empty except for a bottle of expensive vodka, 3 takeout boxes that had started to grow mold, and a jar of olives. No groceries. No signs of actual living. Just the fuel of a desperate man. I moved to the hallway. There was a small console table piled high with mail. This was what I was looking for. People can lie to their families, but the mail never lies. I picked up the stack. It was heavy. I sat down on the rented sofa and started sorting. First-class mail, certified letters, final notices. The first envelope was from the electric company, past due. Disconnect notice scheduled for next Tuesday. The next was from the landlord. 3 months of rent in arrears. Eviction proceedings to commence on the 1st of the month. I did the math in my head. He was behind almost $20,000 just in rent. How was that possible? He told me he was making 6 figures. He told me he had just bought a vacation home in the Hamptons. I kept digging. Credit card statements, American Express, Visa, MasterCard, all maxed out. Cash advances taken at casinos in Atlantic City, tens of thousands of dollars withdrawn at 3 in the morning. My stomach churned. This was not just bad money management. This was an addiction. This was a spiral. But then I found the door to the second bedroom which he used as an office. It was locked. I did not have a key. I looked around. Justin was predictable. He was lazy. I ran my hand along the top of the doorframe. Nothing. I checked under the hallway rug. Nothing. Then I looked at the fake potted plant in the corner. I lifted the plastic leaves and dug my fingers into the dry artificial moss. My fingers brushed against cold metal. The key. I unlocked the office door and pushed it open. The room was chaos. Papers were scattered everywhere on the floor, on the desk, taped to the walls. It looked like the mind of a madman. I stepped over a pile of clothes and sat at his desk. I turned on the desk lamp. Right in the center of the desk, on top of a pile of unpaid parking tickets, was a thick document bound with a heavy clip. The cover page had a logo I did not recognize. Sharktooth Capital Ventures, a predatory lender. I knew these types of firms. They operated in the gray areas of the law, lending money to desperate people at interest rates that would make the mafia blush. I opened the folder. The loan amount was $500,000. The interest rate was 25% compounding monthly. My breath caught in my throat. $500,000. What did he need that kind of money for? And more importantly, how did he get approved for it with credit this bad? I flipped to the collateral section. Usually people put up their house or their car, but Justin had neither. My eyes scanned the legal jargon until I found paragraph 4, subsection B. I read it once. Then I read it again. I took off my glasses and wiped them on my shirt, thinking I must be seeing things. I put them back on and read it a third time. Collateral for this loan is secured by the irrevocable assignment of the expected inheritance and estate assets of William Foster, father of the borrower. Borrower warrants that he has full expectation of receiving said assets within 6 months of the signing of this agreement due to the advanced age and declining health of the benefactor. I froze. The room went silent. The hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen seemed to stop. The traffic noise from the street below faded away. All I could hear was the pounding of my own heart. Within 6 months. He had signed this contract 4 months ago. He had put a deadline on my life. He had borrowed $500,000 from dangerous men and promised them that I would be dead or incapacitated enough to liquidate my assets within 6 months. The accident tonight. The rushing to get power of attorney. The fake doctor reports about my memory loss. It was not just greed. It was a deadline. He was running out of time. If he did not deliver my assets to these sharks soon, they would come for him. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to grab the trash can next to the desk. I retched, but nothing came out. I was empty. My son had sold me. He had literally sold me like a piece of livestock futures. He bet against my life to pay for his gambling and his fake life. I looked at the date on the contract again. The first payment was due next week. A balloon payment of $50,000. He didn't have $50, let alone $50,000. That is why he needed me to sign the power of attorney tomorrow. He needed to sell my house immediately to pay the VIG. I reached for my phone to take a picture of the document. My hands were shaking so badly, I dropped the phone on the desk. It clattered loudly. I took a deep breath. Bill, pull yourself together. You are not a father right now. You are an auditor, and you just found the smoking gun. I took photos of every page. I took photos of the eviction notices. I took photos of the rental tags on the furniture. I built a case file in 5 minutes that would destroy him in any court of law. But court takes time, and I did not have time. These men, the ones holding this contract, they would not wait for a judge. I stood up and put everything back exactly where I found it. I locked the office door and hid the key back in the plant. I turned off the lights and walked to the front door. I checked the peephole to make sure the hallway was empty. As I rode the elevator down, I did not feel fear anymore. The fear had burned away, leaving something cold and hard in its place. I thought about the little boy I used to carry on my shoulders at the beach. I thought about the teenager I taught to drive. I thought about the young man I was so proud of at graduation. I buried them all in that elevator. I walked past the concierge who was busy on his phone. Thanks for the rosary, I said, holding up the beads. He nodded without looking up. Good luck with your son, he said. I walked out to my car. Good luck indeed. My son was already dead to me. Now I just had to make sure he didn't take me with him. I started the engine. It roared to life. I had one more stop to make before I went back to the hospital. I needed to see a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. I needed the meanest, sharpest, most ruthless shark in the city, because I wasn't just fighting for my money anymore. I was fighting for my survival. And if Justin wanted a war, he was about to find out that he picked a fight with the wrong old man. I pulled out into traffic, merging into the lane with a newfound aggression. The audit was over. The execution phase was about to begin. I was halfway to the front door when I heard the electronic chirp of the hallway lock. It was a sharp, mechanical sound that stopped my heart cold. I froze my hand, hovering over the deadbolt I had locked from the inside. Someone was opening the door. I looked at the digital clock on the microwave. It was 3:15 in the morning. Justin was in a coma. It had to be Megan. But why would she be back so soon? She said she was staying at the hospital all night. I did not have time to think. I had seconds. The heavy oak door began to swing open. I scrambled backward, my shoes sliding silently on the polished hardwood. I could not go back to the office. It was a dead end. If they checked the rooms, I would be trapped. I saw the coat closet in the entryway. It was small, narrow, and filled with winter coats that Justin never wore because he never went outside. I dove inside, pulling the door shut, just as the front door clicked into its latch. I pressed myself against the back wall, burying my face in a cashmere wool coat that smelled of cedar and disuse. Through the thin slat of the closet door, I had a sliver of a view of the foyer. I held my breath. My lungs burned. I prayed that my old joints wouldn't pop. Megan walked in. She was not crying. She was not rushing. She was laughing. It was a low throat laugh that I had never heard before. And she was not alone. A man followed her in. He was tall, wearing a suit that cost more than my car, and he had the kind of confident, arrogant walk that comes from having too much money and not enough morals. I recognized him vaguely. He was one of Justin's friends from college, the one who went into real estate. Greg, or maybe Gary. It did not matter. What mattered was that his hand was resting possessively on the small of my daughter-in-law's back. "You are terrible, Megan," the man said, chuckling as he kicked the door shut with his heel. "The old man is sitting there, holding his hand, crying over him, and you are here drinking my scotch." Megan kicked off her heels, sending them skidding across the floor. They landed inches from the closet door. I flinched, but stayed frozen. She sighed, a long, exaggerated sound of relief. "God, Gary, you have no idea. Being the grieving wife is exhausting. My face hurts from frowning. Do you know how hard it is to squeeze out tears when all you want to do is check the Zillow estimate on this dump?" I felt a wave of bile rise in my throat. This was the woman who had toasted me at Thanksgiving. The woman who called me dad. The woman I had defended when my late wife said she seemed superficial. I bit my lip so hard I tasted copper. Gary walked over to the sideboard and poured 2 drinks. I could hear the clink of crystal. "So what is the timeline?" he asked. "I have a buyer lined up for the Hamptons property, but they need to close before the quarter ends. If we wait too long, the market might dip." Megan took the glass from him. "Do not worry, babe," she said, taking a long sip. "The timeline is accelerated. The accident was actually a blessing in disguise. I mean, I did not want Justin to crash, obviously, but it gave us the perfect leverage." She walked towards the living room, pacing back and forth in front of my hiding spot. Her voice dropped an octave, becoming serious and cold. "I spoke to Dr. Stevens an hour ago. He is on board. He has backdated the medical files just like we discussed." My ears began to ring. Backdated. "What about the old man?" Gary asked. "Is he going to be a problem? He looks spry for a geezer. I saw him at the hospital. He has that look in his eyes, like he is calculating something." Megan laughed again, but this time it was cruel. "Bill, please. He is a dinosaur. He thinks the world is still honest. He paid 20 grand for the surgery without asking a single question. He is a walking checkbook. And by Tuesday, he won't legally be able to write a check anyway." I pressed my ear against the wood of the door. This was it. The details. Dr. Stevens finished the evaluation report. "Tonight," Megan continued, "we are going with early onset dementia, aggressive progression triggered by the trauma of his wife's death and now his son's accident. The court loves a tragedy. Stevens wrote that Bill is confused, disoriented, and unable to manage his own affairs. We will present it to the emergency judge on Monday morning." Gary whistled low and impressed. "Dementia. That is heavy. Is it reversible?" Megan swirled the ice in her glass. "Once I have the guardianship papers signed, it does not matter if he runs a marathon and recites Shakespeare. I will have the legal authority to make all medical and financial decisions. And my first decision will be that he requires specialized care." "Where are you going to put him?" Gary asked. Megan paused. "There is a facility upstate. Shady Pines or Whispering Oaks, something like that. It is state-funded. It is cheap, minimal supervision. They sedate the patients at night so they don't wander. Once he is in there, nobody will listen to him. If he complains about money or lawyers, they will just up his dosage of antipsychotics. It is perfect. He will be a vegetable within 6 months. I felt like I had been shot. My legs began to tremble so violently I had to lock my knees to keep from collapsing into the coats. They were not just stealing my money. They were stealing my mind. They were going to drug me, lock me away, and erase me. I was not a person to them. I was an obstacle to be removed. "And the house?" Gary asked. "Sold," Megan said instantly. "We listed on Tuesday afternoon the minute the gavel comes down. I want a cash offer. We need to pay off Justin's loan shark before they break his other leg. Whatever is left, we split. 50-50. Just like we planned." She walked over to Gary, and I saw through the crack that she wrapped her arms around his neck. "You know," she whispered, "if Justin does not wake up, it makes things even easier. Life insurance pays double for accidental death." Gary kissed her. "You are a monster," he murmured into her hair, "and I love it." "Let's go to the bedroom," Megan said, pulling him by his tie. "I need to get out of these funeral clothes." They moved down the hallway, giggling like teenagers. I heard the bedroom door slam shut. I heard the lock turn. I waited. I counted to 100. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I was sweating profusely in the heavy wool coats, but I felt cold down to my bones. I pushed the closet door open. It creaked. I froze. Silence from the bedroom. I stepped out into the foyer. My legs felt like lead. I looked at the shoes Megan had kicked off. Red bottom heels. Blood red. I wanted to scream. I wanted to kick the door down and confront them. But I knew that would be suicide. If I confronted them now, they would call the police. They would say I broke in. They would say I was violent, confused, acting crazy. It would only support their dementia narrative. No, I had to be a ghost. I crept to the front door. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely grip the lock. I turned it slowly, millimeter by millimeter, praying the mechanism was silent. It clicked. Softly. I opened the door just wide enough to slip through. I stepped out into the hallway and pulled the door closed behind me. When the latch engaged, I slumped against the wall, gasping for air. I felt like I had been underwater for an hour. I walked to the elevator. I did not run. I walked with the slow, deliberate steps of a man who has just seen his own funeral. When I got to my car, I did not start the engine immediately. I sat there in the dark parking garage, gripping the steering wheel. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked for the confused old man they talked about. I looked for the victim. He was gone. In his place was someone else. Someone colder. Someone who had spent 40 years looking at spreadsheets and finding the rot hidden in the columns. Megan thought I was a dinosaur. She thought I was feeble. She forgot that dinosaurs were apex predators for millions of years. She wanted to play the medical game. She wanted to use doctors and diagnoses as weapons. Fine. Two could play that game. But she didn't know that I had the one thing she didn't. I had the truth. And I had the documentation I had photographed in the office. I started the car. The engine roared to life, echoing in the concrete garage. I was not going home. Going home was dangerous. If they were planning to ambush me on Monday, I needed to be somewhere they could not find me. Somewhere secure. And I needed allies. I put the car in reverse and backed out. As I drove up the ramp towards the streetlights, I made a promise to the city skyline. I promised that by Tuesday, Megan would wish she was the one in that coma. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. It was late, but I knew she would be awake. "Agnes," I said when she answered, her voice groggy but alert. "Bill, is that you?" she asked. "Are you okay?" "No, Agnes," I said, merging onto the highway. "I am not okay. But I am alive. And you were right. They are going to try to commit me." There was a silence on the line, then the rustle of sheets. "Where are you?" Agnes asked. "I am coming back to the hospital," I said, "but not as a visitor. I need you to tell me everything you know about Dr. Stevens. Every rumor, every lawsuit, every dirty secret." "I know plenty," Agnes said, her voice hardening. "He is a gambler, Bill. He plays poker at the underground club on 4th Street. He owes money to the same people your son does." I smiled in the darkness. It was a grim, humorless smile. Of course he does. It is a circle of rats. "I am coming, Agnes. Get some rest. The war starts at dawn." I hung up and pressed the accelerator. The old Ford Taurus surged forward. I was done being the father. I was the auditor now, and I was about to close the books on all of them. The drive back to the hospital felt like a funeral procession for the man I used to be. The city lights blurred past my window like streaks of neon paint, but I barely saw them. I was busy rehearsing. I was an actor preparing for the role of a lifetime. The character I had to play was William Foster, the confused, grieving father. The pensioner who forgot where he put his keys. The old man who was slowly losing his grip on reality. It was a role my daughter-in-law Megan had written for me, but I was going to rewrite the ending. I pulled into the hospital parking garage and found a spot on the 4th level away from the cameras. I sat in the dark for a moment, breathing in the smell of stale upholstery and old coffee. I checked my face in the rearview mirror. My eyes were red from lack of sleep, which was good. It made me look weak. I messed up my hair slightly, pulling a few strands out of place. I loosened my tie so it looked askew. I practiced a tremor in my right hand. It had to be subtle. Just a slight shake when I reached for things. Enough to be noticed, but not enough to look fake. I walked into the lobby, and the air conditioning hit me with a blast of artificial cold. The night shift security guard nodded at me, but I pretended not to see him. I walked with a slight shuffle, letting my shoulders slump. I made my way up to the ICU waiting room. Megan was there. She was sitting in the same chair where I had left her, but she had changed. She was wearing a different cardigan, now something modest and beige. The predator from the apartment who drank scotch and laughed about putting me in a state facility was gone. In her place was the devoted wife. She looked up when I entered, and her face crumbled into a mask of concern. "Bill," she said, standing up and rushing over to me. "Where have you been? We were so worried. You disappeared for hours. I tried calling your cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail." I patted my pockets, looking bewildered. "Did you? I must have turned it off. Or maybe the battery died. I cannot remember. I was driving. I think I got lost. I ended up near the old stadium and I could not figure out how to get back to the highway." "Everything looks different at night, Megan." The signs were confusing. I saw the flicker of triumph in her eyes. It was quick, but it was there. She touched my arm gently. "It is okay, Bill. You are under a lot of stress. Come sit down. Dr. Stevens is here. He has been waiting for you. He has some news about Justin and about you." "About me?" I asked, letting my voice quaver. "Why about me? Is Justin okay?" Dr. Stevens stepped out from the hallway. He was a tall man with silver hair and a tan that looked like it came from a bottle. He wore a white coat that was starched stiff and a blue silk tie. He looked like the kind of doctor you see on billboards, the kind you trust with your life. But I looked at his hands. His fingernails were bitten down to the quick, and there was a slight yellow stain on his index finger. Nicotine. He was nervous. "Mr. Foster." Dr. Stevens said, his voice smooth as velvet. "Please come into my office. We need to discuss some test results." I followed him down the corridor, my feet dragging slightly on the linoleum. Megan walked on my other side, her hand hovering near my elbow as if she expected me to tip over at any moment. We entered a small consultation room. It smelled of antiseptic and lemon polish. There was a computer on the desk and a light box on the wall for x-rays. Dr. Stevens motioned for me to sit. I sank into the chair, gripping the armrests. Megan sat next to me, pulling her chair close. Mr. Foster. Dr. Stevens began clasping his hands on the desk. We ran some comprehensive tests on Justin. His condition is stable but critical. However, while reviewing his chart and speaking with Megan, she expressed some concerns about your well-being. She mentioned that you have been experiencing episodes of confusion lately. Memory lapses, disorientation. I looked at Megan. She bit her lip and looked down at her hands. I just want you to be safe, Bill, she whispered. The other day you left the stove on, and you forgot my name at the barbecue last month. It was a lie. A bold, calculated lie. I had never left a stove on in my life, and I certainly had never forgotten her name. But I did not argue. I blinked rapidly, as if trying to process this. I do not recall that I stammered. Dr. Stevens nodded sympathetically. That is common with this condition, Mr. Foster. The patient is often the last to know. Given the extreme stress of this accident, Megan suggested we run a quick cognitive screening on you while you were here earlier. Do you remember when the nurse took your blood pressure and asked you those questions? I remembered. A nurse had asked me the date and the president's name while checking my vitals. I had answered correctly. Well, Dr. Stevens continued. We also did a precautionary scan, a rapid MRI, just to rule out any stress-induced stroke. He stood up and turned on the light box. He clipped a film onto the screen. It showed a brain. Gray matter, white matter, dark spaces. This is your scan, Mr. Foster, Dr. Stevens said, pointing a pen at the image. Do you see these dark areas here in the frontal lobe and here in the hippocampus? This is what we call cortical atrophy. It is significant. This pattern is indicative of early-onset vascular dementia, accelerated by acute stress. I stared at the image. My heart hammered in my chest. To a layman, it looked terrifying. It looked like a brain that was dissolving. But I was not a layman. I was a forensic accountant. I spent 40 years looking at documents that people created to deceive. I knew that every official document has a fingerprint, a code, a sequence. I leaned forward, squinting my eyes. I put on my reading glasses slowly. My hands shook as I reached towards the light box. Is that my brain? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Yes, Bill, Megan said softly. It is. I looked closer. In the top right corner of the film, there was a block of text. Patient name, Foster William. Date of birth, March 12, 1955. Date of scan, October 14, 2023. It looked perfect. But then my eyes drifted to the bottom left corner, the serial number of the machine. Siemens Magnetom, serial number 45992-B. And right next to it, the digital timestamp of the image capture. 9:42 a.m. I froze inside. 9:42 a.m. I had arrived at the hospital at 2:15 a.m. this morning. I had been with Justin until 4 a.m. I left to get breakfast. I came back. I had never been near an MRI machine at 9:42 a.m. In fact, at 9:42 a.m. I was at the bank, arguing about a withdrawal limit. And there was something else. A forensic detail that screamed fraud. The font of the patient name was Arial, but the font of the hospital header, Methodist General, was Times New Roman. In a generated medical record, the system uses a single font family for the entire overlay. This was a composite, a Photoshop job. Someone had taken a scan of a diseased brain, probably from a medical textbook or another patient, and digitally pasted my name onto it. They had made a mistake, a sloppy clerical mistake. I looked at Dr. Stevens. He was watching me closely, sweating slightly under his hairline. He was waiting for me to break. He was waiting for me to accept my fate. I felt a surge of cold rage so powerful I almost choked. This man took an oath. Do no harm. And here he was holding up a picture of a stranger's dying brain and telling me it was mine so he could pay off his gambling debts. I lowered my head into my hands. I let out a ragged sob. "Oh God," and I cried. "Oh God, no. That is why. That is why I got lost tonight. That is why I could not find the keys." Megan put her arm around me. I stiffened but forced myself to lean into her. "Shh, Bill," she cooed. "It is going to be okay. We are going to take care of you." Dr. Stevens sat back down, looking relieved. He opened a folder on his desk. "Mr. Foster, this is a difficult diagnosis, but it explains the erratic behavior, the wandering, the spending. Megan tells me you wrote a large check for the surgery without checking your balance. Impulsive financial decisions are a classic symptom." He pushed the folder towards me. "We need to be proactive. If you leave this hospital tonight without supervision, you could hurt yourself or someone else. Megan is willing to step up. She has prepared a petition for emergency guardianship. It simply allows her to make medical decisions for you and manage your assets so they are not lost. It is a temporary measure until you stabilize." I looked at the papers. "Petition for involuntary guardianship due to incapacity." I looked at Megan. Her eyes were wet with fake tears. "Please, Bill," she said. "Do it for Justin. He would want you safe. If you do not sign this, the state will intervene. They will put you in a ward with strangers. I want to keep you home. I want to take care of you." The audacity was breathtaking. She had just told her lover she would put me in a state facility and drug me into a vegetable state. Now she was promising to take care of me. I wiped my eyes with a handkerchief. I do not know what to do," I stammered. "I am scared, doctor. I do not want to go to a home." "You won't have to," Dr. Stevens said, tapping the paper with his pen. "Just sign this. It designates Megan as your guardian. She can take you home tonight." I reached for the pen. My hand hovered over the signature line. I saw the muscles in Dr. Stevens's jaw tighten. He was hungry for this signature. I pulled my hand back. I need a glass of water," I said, my voice raspy. "My throat is dry, and I need to use the restroom. This is too much. I feel dizzy." "Of course," Dr. Stevens said. "Take a moment." "But Bill, time is of the essence. The social worker is coming on shift soon. If she sees your condition, she might file for state custody immediately. It is better if we handle this within the family." I nodded, weak and defeated. "I will be right back. Just let me wash my face." I stood up, using the table for support. I shuffled to the door. As I stepped out into the hallway, I heard Megan whisper, "He is breaking. He will sign in 5 minutes." I walked to the restroom down the hall. I pushed the door open and checked under the stalls. Empty. I walked to the sink and turned on the cold water. I splashed it on my face, washing away the fake tears. I looked in the mirror. The old man was gone. The auditor was back. I pulled out my phone. I had taken a picture of the brain scan while they were looking at the papers. I zoomed in on the timestamp. I zoomed in on the mismatched fonts. I had the evidence. Now I needed the trap. I dried my hands with a paper towel. I was not going to sign that paper. Not tonight. I needed to stall. I needed to get them to commit a crime on record. Presenting a forged medical document to a patient is fraud. But presenting it to a court of law is perjury and a felony that carries mandatory prison time. I needed them to file it. I walked back to the office. I stopped at the door and took a deep breath, summoning the confused old man back into my body. I opened the door. "Doctor," I said, my voice trembling, "I cannot sign this tonight. My hand, it won't stop shaking. And I want to pray on it. I want to go to the chapel." Megan's face hardened. "Bill, we do not have time for prayer." I looked at her with wide, innocent eyes. "But Megan, it is Sunday. I never make big decisions on Sunday without praying. I will sign it tomorrow. First thing in the morning. I promise. You can bring the papers here. I will stay in Justin's room. I won't go anywhere." Dr. Stevens and Megan exchanged a look. They were annoyed, but they could not force the pen into my hand. Not without leaving bruises. "Fine," Megan said, her voice tight. "Tomorrow morning. 8 a.m. sharp. And Bill, do not leave the hospital." "I won't," I said. "I am too scared to drive now. I will just sit with my son." I turned and walked away. I could feel their eyes boring into my back. They thought they had won. They thought I was a scared old man seeking comfort in prayer. They were wrong. I was not going to the chapel to pray. I was going to find a fax machine. I was sending the photo of that fake MRI to Sarah Jenkins, my lawyer. And then I was going to make a phone call to the State Medical Licensing Board. Dr. Stevens wanted to talk about atrophy. I was about to show him exactly what happens when a career rots from the inside out. I walked back towards the ICU, my step a little lighter, my mind razor sharp. The audit was proceeding perfectly. I walked out of the hospital feeling like a man carrying a grenade with the pin pulled out. I had bought myself 12 hours by playing the role of the confused old man, but the clock was ticking louder than my own heartbeat. I needed a general, and I found her in the patient lounge on the 3rd floor. Agnes was sitting in a wheelchair, looking out at the city lights. She looked small and fragile in her hospital gown, but when she turned to face me, her eyes were as sharp as broken glass. "You did not sign it," she said. It was not a question. I sat down on the vinyl bench next to her. "No, Agnes, I did not." I stalled. I told them I needed to pray. She let out a dry, raspy chuckle. "Good. Prayer is good, but strategy is better. Now listen to me, Bill, because we do not have much time. You think I am just a nosy old lady who listens through curtains, but I wasn't always old and I wasn't always sick. For 40 years, I was the head clerk at the county family court. I have seen thousands of petitions for guardianship cross my desk. I have seen greedy children strip their parents of dignity and dollars faster than you can blink." I stared at her, stunned. "A court clerk? The gatekeeper of the legal system." "I know exactly what they are doing," Agnes continued. "They are using the emergency statute. If they get temporary guardianship tomorrow morning, they can liquidate your assets before a judge even reviews the medical evidence. It is a loophole the size of a truck, and your son is driving right through it." "What do?" I asked. "I have the evidence of the fake MRI." "That is good for a criminal trial later," Agnes said, waving her hand dismissively. "But that won't stop them tomorrow. You need a shield, Bill. You need to make yourself worthless." She reached into the pocket of her robe and pulled out a crumpled business card. Her hand shook, but her voice was steady. "Call this number. Her name is Sarah Jenkins. She used to be a public defender until she got tired of watching the system fail the elderly. She is expensive, she is mean, and she hates bullies more than she likes money. Tell her Agnes sent you. Tell her it is a code-red guardianship." I took the card. It was thick and black with silver lettering. Sarah Jenkins, attorney at law. I went to the stairwell and dialed the number. It was nearly midnight on a Sunday. I expected voicemail. Instead, the phone rang twice and a voice answered. It was crisp alert and sounded like it was fueled by caffeine and rage. "This is Jenkins. Make it quick." I swallowed hard. Ms. Jenkins, my name is Bill Foster. Agnes told me to call. She said it is a code-red guardianship. My son and his wife have a fake MRI and a petition ready for 8 a.m. tomorrow. There was a silence on the line. Then I heard the sound of a chair scraping against a floor and keys jingling. Meet me at my office in 20 minutes, she said. Bring every financial document you can access on your phone. And bring coffee. Black. 20 minutes later, I was standing in a brick building in the old part of town. Sarah Jenkins opened the door. She was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with sharp features and hair pulled back in a severe bun. She wore a sweatshirt that said Yale Law and sweatpants, but her eyes were the most intense things I had ever seen. Come in, she ordered, stepping aside. She did not offer a handshake. She walked straight to a massive oak desk covered in files and booted up 3 monitors. I sat down and laid it all out. The car accident, the debt, the eavesdropping in the closet, the fake MRI. Sarah listened without interrupting. She typed furiously on a mechanical keyboard, the clicking sound filling the room like gunfire. When I finished, she spun her chair around to face me. They have checkmate in 3 moves, Bill, she said. The moment they file that petition tomorrow morning, your assets are frozen. Even if you fight it later and win, your money will be gone. Used to pay their debts and their legal fees to fight you. It is a perverse system. You effectively pay them to steal from you. I felt the blood drain from my face. So it is hopeless. No, Sarah said, a thin smile touching her lips. It is not hopeless. It is just aggressive. We are going to nuke the board. If they want to be the guardians of your estate, we are going to make sure there is no estate to guard. She pulled up a document template on her screen. We are creating an irrevocable trust, she explained. Tonight, right now. An irrevocable trust is a separate legal entity. It is not you. It is a vault. Once you move your assets into it, you no longer own them. The trust owns them. And if you do not own them, a guardian cannot touch them. But if I do not own them, I asked, how do I live? Sarah tapped the screen. You will be the primary beneficiary for your lifetime. But here is the kicker. You cannot be the trustee because they will argue you are incompetent. So I will be the temporary trustee. And we will add a poison pill clause. She started typing rapidly, reciting the words as they appeared on the screen. Clause 14, Section B. In the event that any immediate family member files for guardianship or challenges the competency of the grantor, any and all discretionary distributions to said family members are permanently revoked. Furthermore, the beneficial interest of the trust shall immediately shift to a charitable organization. She looked at me. Pick a charity, Bill. Any charity. As long as it is not your son. I thought about the fake MRI. I thought about Megan's laugh. I thought about the lie that I was demented. The National Center for Victims of Crime, I said. And the local animal shelter. The one on 5th Street. Done, Sarah said. Now comes the scary part, Bill. For this to work, you have to transfer everything. The deed to your house, your savings, your retirement accounts. You have to sign it all over to the trust. Tonight, before 8 a.m. You are effectively making yourself a pauper. On paper, you will be homeless and penniless. I hesitated. It went against every instinct I had as an accountant. To give up control. To trust a lawyer I had just met. Sarah saw my hesitation. She leaned forward. Bill, listen to me. If you keep the money in your name, Justin takes it by Tuesday. If you put it in the trust, it is safe. I am bound by fiduciary duty. If I steal a dime, I go to prison. If Justin takes it, he goes to the Hamptons. I looked at the clock. It was 2 a.m. 6 hours left. Do it, I said. For the next 4 hours, we worked in a frenzy. We used the online portal to quitclaim the deed of my house to the William Foster Trust. We logged into my brokerage accounts. My hands shook as I typed in the passwords. These were accounts I had built over 40 years, dollar by dollar, skipping vacations, driving old cars, all for Justin. I clicked transfer all. The screen buffered, a little spinning wheel, and then a green checkmark, transaction complete. My balance on the screen went to 0. I felt a strange sensation. I expected panic. Instead, I felt lighter. I felt free. I was no longer the prey because I had no meat on my bones. Sarah printed out the trust documents. They were thick and heavy. She called a 24-hour notary service. A sleepy-looking man named Dave arrived at 4:30 a.m., stamped the papers, and left. "It is done," Sarah said at 5 a.m., rubbing her eyes. "You are now a man of 0 means. Your house, your car, your money, it all belongs to the trust." "What happens at 8 a.m.?" I asked. Sarah stood up and put on a blazer over her sweatshirt. She transformed from a hacker into a litigator in seconds. "At 8 a.m., you go to that meeting. You play the part. Let them put the paper in front of you. Let them gloat. And then I will walk in." She handed me a copy of the trust document. "Go back to the hospital, Bill. Get some sleep in the waiting room. Be the tired, confused old man one last time. When the sun comes up, we spring the trap." I drove back to the hospital as the sky was turning gray. I walked past the security desk and up to the 3rd floor. I peeked into Agnes's room. She was asleep, breathing rhythmically. I whispered a silent thank you to the darkness. I sat in the chair outside Justin's room. Megan was inside, sleeping on the cot. Justin was still connected to the machines, his chest rising and falling. I looked at him and felt a profound sadness. I had not just signed away my money. I had signed away my fatherhood. By creating that trust, I had legally cemented the fact that my son was my enemy. I closed my eyes and waited for the sunrise. I waited for the moment when my son would try to harvest me and realize the field was barren. At 7:45 a.m., the elevator dinged. Dr. Stevens stepped out holding a clipboard. He looked fresh-shaved and ready to do business. He saw me sitting there and smiled a predatory smile. "Good morning, Bill," he said, his voice dripping with false cheer. "Today is a big day. We are going to get you the help you need." I looked up at him and blinked my eyes groggily. "Is it?" I asked. "Is it time?" "Yes," Dr. Stevens said. "Come inside. Megan is waking up. The notary is on his way. We can get this signed, and then you can rest." I stood up slowly, leaning heavily on the wall. I walked into the room. The stage was set. The players were in place. I sat in the chair by the window. I checked my watch. 7:55 a.m. Sarah would be parking her car right now. Megan sat up, stretching like a cat. "Morning, Bill," she said, yawning. "Did you pray? Did you get your answer?" "Yes," I said, looking at my hands. "I got my answer." "Good," she said, pulling the guardianship petition out of her bag. "Then let's get this over with." I watched the second hand on the clock on the wall. Tick, tick, tick. I was not afraid anymore. I was just waiting for the door to open. I was waiting for the look on their faces when they realized that the old dinosaur had teeth. The sun was fully up now, painting the hospital parking lot in stark, unforgiving light. I sat in my car for a moment, watching a family walk towards the entrance. A father holding his daughter's hand. A mother carrying a balloon. They looked happy. They looked normal. I felt a pang of jealousy so sharp it almost took my breath away. I used to be that father. I used to be the man who protected his family from the world. Now I was the man protecting myself from my family. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror one last time. I had messed up my collar. I had rubbed my eyes until they were red and rimmed with exhaustion. But the most important change was internal. I had to dim the light behind my eyes. I had to suppress the auditor, the man who noticed everything, and replace him with the victim, the man who noticed nothing. I opened the car door and stepped out. I let my feet drag slightly on the pavement. A shuffle. The walk of a man whose center of gravity is shifting, whose confidence is eroding. I walked towards the sliding glass doors, but I did not go straight to the elevators. I needed to create a trail, a forensic audit trail of incompetence. If this ever went to court, I needed video evidence that supported their narrative. I needed to give them exactly what they wanted, so they would get sloppy. I walked into the lobby and stopped. I looked around with wide, fearful eyes. I spotted the black dome of a security camera mounted above the reception desk. I stared right at it for a second, then looked away, confused. I turned left towards the cafeteria instead of right towards the elevators. I walked about 20 feet, then stopped. I spun around slowly, looking at the signs on the wall, as if the letters were dancing and made no sense. I reached out and touched the wall for balance. A young volunteer in a pink vest approached me. "Sir," she asked, her voice high and sweet. "Can I help you find something? You look a little lost." I looked at her and let my mouth hang open slightly. I am looking for the kitchen," I stammered. "I need to make coffee. Martha is waiting for her coffee." The girl frowned. "Martha? Sir, this is a hospital. Are you looking for the cafeteria?" I blinked rapidly. "Hospital? No. No, I am at home. I just came downstairs." The girl's face softened into pity. "Oh dear," she said gently. "You are confused. Let me check your wristband." She looked at the plastic band on my arm. "Mr. Foster, you are a visitor, right? Do you have a patient here?" I pulled my arm back as if I was scared. "My son," I whispered. "My son he is hurt." The car, the blue folder. I was mixing the truth with the lie. It was the most effective way to act. The fear about the car and the folder was real, but the disorientation was the performance. "Let me take you to the elevator, Mr. Foster," the girl said, taking my elbow. "We will find your son." She guided me to the elevator bank. As the doors closed, I looked up at the camera in the ceiling and let a look of absolute vacancy wash over my face. I knew exactly what would happen. If Megan or her lawyer subpoenaed the hospital footage later to prove I was unfit, this clip would be their star witness. I was manufacturing the nails for my own coffin, knowing I had the crowbar to pry it open later. When I reached the third floor, I did not go straight to room 304. I wandered down the hall to the nurse's station. I stood there tapping my fingers on the counter until the head nurse looked up. "Excuse me," I said, my voice trembling. "Has anyone seen my wife? She said she was going to the store, but she has been gone for hours." The nurse knew me. She knew my wife had been dead for 5 years. Her eyes widened. "Mr. Foster," she said, coming around the counter, "your wife passed away. Remember, you are here with your son, Justin." I recoiled as if she had slapped me. "Dead," I whispered. "No, that is not right. She was just here. She was wearing her blue dress." I saw the nurse reach for the phone. She was calling Dr. Stevens or the social worker. Good. The seed was planted. The roots were taking hold. I turned and shuffled away, muttering to myself. I made my way to Justin's room. The door was open. I paused in the doorway. The scene inside was a masterclass in deception. Justin was sitting up in bed, propped by pillows. The tubes were gone. He looked pale but alert. Megan was sitting on the edge of the bed, feeding him ice chips. They looked like a devoted couple. If I didn't know about the text messages about the loan sharks, about the plan to drug me, I would have wept at the sight of them. Bill, Megan said, spotting me. "Thank God." The nurse called up. "She said you were wandering around the maternity ward looking for me." I walked into the room and stood at the foot of the bed. I looked at Megan. I squinted my eyes. "Hello, miss," I said politely. Is this room 304? I am looking for my son." Megan froze. The spoon with the ice chips stopped halfway to Justin's mouth. She looked at Justin. A look of dark excitement passed between them. It was working faster than they dreamed. "Dad," Justin said, his voice raspy. "It is me." "Justin. And this is Megan, your daughter-in-law." I stepped closer, tilting my head. "Megan," I repeated, testing the word. You look like the lady from the bank." "No," Megan said, standing up and coming over to me. Her voice was soothing, but I saw the predatory gleam in her eyes. "It is Megan. We had dinner on Sunday. Don't you remember?" I rubbed my forehead. "Sunday, I do not know. My head feels full of cotton. I just want to go home." "We know, Dad," Justin said. "And we are going to take you home. Dr. Stevens was just here. He said I am doing remarkably well. My vitals are strong. He said I can be discharged this afternoon as long as I have home care." "Discharged?" I asked. "But the surgery, the coma, it was a miracle, Dad," Justin said. "I heal fast, you know that. And honestly, I cannot stand another minute in this place. I want to be home. I want to be with you." He was lying. You do not recover from a traumatic brain injury and a coma in 12 hours. He was rushing the discharge because he needed to get me to the house. The hospital was too public. There were too many witnesses, like the nice girl in the pink vest or the head nurse. They needed me isolated. They needed me in their territory. Megan put a hand on my shoulder. "We thought it would be nice to have a little gathering tonight. Just family. A sort of welcome home party for Justin and a thank you dinner for you, Bill, for saving his life." "A party," I said warily. "I do not have a suit." "You do not need a suit," Megan said. "Just be yourself. We invited a few close friends. And a notary." "A notary?" I asked blankly. "Yes," Justin cut in quickly. "Just for some insurance papers, Dad. Boring stuff. But we need to get it sorted so the insurance company pays for the hospital bill. You do not want me to have to pay this bill, do you?" "No," I said automatically. "No debt. Debt is bad." "Exactly," Justin said. "So we go home, we eat good food, we sign a few papers, and then Megan is going to take care of everything. You won't have to worry about bills or banks or anything ever again." He made it sound like a promise of peace. I knew it was a sentence of silence. "Okay," I said quietly. "Okay, let's go home." The next 3 hours were a blur of activity. Megan packed up the room with an efficiency that was terrifying. She treated me like a piece of luggage, moving me from chair to chair, handing me a magazine upside down to see if I would notice. I didn't correct it. I stared at the upside-down car advertisement and traced the wheels with my finger. Dr. Stevens came in to sign the discharge papers. He barely looked at Justin. He was looking at me. He was watching his investment. "Mr. Foster," Dr. Stevens said, "I am prescribing a mild sedative for you tonight, just to help you sleep. The excitement might be too much for your condition." I took the prescription script from his hand. "Thank you, doctor," I said. "You are very kind." I put the paper in my pocket. That piece of paper was another nail in his coffin. Prescribing sedatives to a man he had falsely diagnosed with dementia without a psychiatric consult was malpractice. I would add it to the file Sarah Jenkins was building. We left the hospital in a convoy. Megan drove her SUV with Justin in the passenger seat. I followed in my old Ford Taurus. They didn't offer to drive me. They probably figured if I crashed, it would just add to the evidence of my incompetence. I drove carefully, keeping them in sight. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I glanced down. A text from Sarah Jenkins. Trust is active and filed with the county clerk. You are officially indigent. The trap is set. I will be at the house at 8:15 p.m. Do not sign anything until I walk through that door. I took a deep breath. The safety net was in place. We arrived at the house. My house. The house I had bought 30 years ago. The house where I had raised Justin. It looked the same, but it felt different. It felt like a stage set for a tragedy. Megan unlocked the front door and ushered us in. The house was cold. I had turned the thermostat down to save money before I rushed to the hospital. It is freezing in here, Megan complained. She walked to the thermostat and cranked it up to 80. See, Bill, she said, talking to me like a child. We are going to make you comfortable. No more freezing to save pennies. She was already spending my money, heating the air she thought she owned. Justin limped to the couch and sat down. He let out a groan that sounded real. The drive had hurt him. Good. I hoped it hurt. Dad. Justin called out. Come sit here. We need to talk about the schedule for tonight. I sat in the armchair opposite him. The leather was cracked and worn. So Justin said, The notary is coming at 8. Greg and his wife are coming too. And Dr. Stevens said he might drop by for a drink. A drink, I asked. But you are on medication. Justin waved his hand. I am celebrating Dad. I am alive. And I am about to be rich. I mean, we are about to be secure. He slipped. He almost said rich. The mask was slipping. He was getting cocky. I stared at the rug. I remember this rug, I said softly. Your mother bought it. She spilled red wine on it the first Christmas we had it. She cried. I told her it added character. Justin rolled his eyes. He didn't see me looking, but I saw the reflection in the window behind him. Yeah, Dad. Great story, he said dismissively. Look, go wash up, put on a clean shirt. You smell like the hospital. I stood up. I walked down the hall to my bedroom. I closed the door and leaned against it. I looked around my room. The photos on the dresser. The books on the nightstand. My life. They wanted to erase all of this. They wanted to turn this room into a guest room or a gym or whatever they planned to do once they shipped me off to the facility. I walked to the closet and pulled out a fresh shirt. As I buttoned it, I looked at my hands. They were old hands, spotted and veined, but they were steady. I was not the prey. I was the hunter. And tonight I was going to skin the wolves. I walked back out to the living room. Megan was in the kitchen opening bottles of wine. Expensive wine. My wine. Bottles I had been saving for a special occasion. Well, I thought. This is a special occasion. It is the funeral of my relationship with my son. I sat down and waited. The doorbell rang at 7:30. It was the caterers. Megan had ordered hundreds of dollars of food. Sushi, lobster tails, champagne. Who is paying for this? I asked, feigning anxiety. I do not have cash. Don't worry, Bill, Megan said, patting my cheek. You are paying, but you won't feel a thing. She laughed. It was the same laugh I heard from the closet. By 8 o'clock, the living room was full. The notary, a sweating man named Frank, was setting up his stamp on the dining table. Greg, the real estate agent, was there clapping Justin on the back. Dr. Stevens had arrived holding a tumbler of scotch. They were all there. The conspirators, eating my food, drinking my wine, planning my demise. I sat in the corner holding a glass of water, observing them. They ignored me. To them, I was already gone. I was just a signature waiting to happen. Justin stood up and tapped a spoon against his glass. The room went quiet. Everyone, he said, raising his glass. Thank you for coming on such short notice. We are here to celebrate life. My life, obviously, but also the next chapter for this family. He turned to me. His eyes were cold and dead. To my father, he said, for knowing when it is time to pass the torch. Everyone raised their glasses. To Bill they chorused. I raised my water glass. My hand shook uncontrollably. I spilled a little water on my shirt. Megan rushed over with a napkin. Oh, Bill, look at you. You are making a mess. Come on, let's get the paperwork done before you spill anything else. She guided me to the table. The notary pushed a stack of documents towards me. Sign here, he said, pointing to the line. And here. And here. I looked at the document. Durable power of attorney, transfer of deed, revocation of prior wills. It was a death warrant. I picked up the pen. The room held its breath. I could feel their greed radiating like heat. I brought the pen to the paper. I hesitated. What is the date? I asked, looking up. I cannot remember the date. It is the 15th, Bill, Megan said impatiently. Just sign. I looked at the clock on the wall. 8:14 p.m. Sarah was 1 minute away. I need to read it, I said. My father always said, read before you sign. Bill Justin snapped, his voice sharp. You cannot understand it. It is legalese. Just trust me. Sign the damn paper. I looked at him. I looked deep into his eyes. I wanted to see if there was anything left of my son in there. Anything at all. But there was nothing. Just a reflection of a man who owed money to bad people. I lowered the pen. I think I hear a car, I said. Nobody heard it but me. The sound of a door slamming. The sound of confident footsteps on the walkway. The doorbell rang. It was a sharp, piercing sound that cut through the tension. Who the hell is that? Megan hissed. We didn't invite anyone else. Maybe it is the flower delivery, Justin said. Ignore it. Dad sign. I put the pen down. I think we should answer the door, I said, my voice suddenly steady, my voice suddenly clear, my voice suddenly the voice of the auditor. I think it is my guest. Justin looked at me confused. The change in my tone confused him. Your guest, he asked. You do not have guests. You do not even know what day it is. I smiled. It was a cold, terrifying smile. I know exactly what day it is, Justin. It is Judgment Day. The front door opened. Sarah Jenkins walked in. She was wearing a sharp black suit and carrying a briefcase that looked like a weapon. Behind her were 2 uniformed police officers. The room went silent. The lobster tails were forgotten. The champagne went flat. Bill sat back in his chair and crossed his arms. Hello, Sarah, he said. I believe we have some paperwork to review. The house smelled of melted butter and expensive sea salt. It was a rich, heavy scent that filled the living room where I had spent 30 years watching Wheel of Fortune and grading tax returns. Tonight, my living room had been transformed into a banquet hall for the people who were about to carve up my life. Megan had ordered lobster thermidor and truffle risotto from the most expensive bistro in the city. I sat in my favorite leather armchair, the one with the cracked armrest that Justin used to jump on when he was 5 years old, and I watched them eat. I held a glass of lukewarm water in my hands, letting it tremble slightly every few seconds. It was a calculated performance. The tremor needed to be visible enough to justify the medical diagnosis of frailty, but not so violent that I spilled the water and drew attention to myself before I was ready. I observed the room with the hooded eyes of a man who is half asleep, but inside my mind was recording every detail like a security camera. There were 12 people in my house, 12 witnesses to the crime they thought was a celebration. Dr. Stevens was standing by the fireplace holding a tumbler of my 20-year-old single malt scotch. He was laughing too loudly at a joke Greg, the real estate agent, had just told. Greg was leaning against the mantel, running his hand along the wood, not admiring the craftsmanship, but assessing the resale value. I could practically see the dollar signs spinning in his eyes. He was already calculating his commission on the quick sale Megan had promised him. Then there was Frank, the notary public. He was a small, sweaty man who looked like he had not slept in a week. He sat at the dining room table, which had been cleared of food and set up as a signing station. He kept checking his watch and wiping his forehead with a handkerchief. He knew this was wrong. He knew that notarizing documents for a man who was allegedly incapacitated was a felony, but he was here anyway. Everyone has a price, and I wondered what Justin had promised him. $500, $1,000. It was pathetic how cheaply a man would sell his soul. Justin was the center of gravity. He moved through the room with a manic energy, limping slightly for effect whenever anyone looked at him. He played the role of the survivor perfectly. He accepted pats on the back and sympathetic nods from his friends. "Oh yes, it was terrible," he would say, his voice dropping to a whisper. "But I am just glad I made it out, so I can take care of Dad." Take care of Dad. The phrase made my stomach turn. I took a sip of water to wash down the bile. I looked at the coffee table in front of me. Megan had placed a few brochures there. Brochures for assisted living facilities, Shady Pines, Oakwood Meadows, places with nice names and barred windows. She had left them there, casually subliminal messaging for the guests. "See, we are looking for the best place for him. We are responsible." At 8:15, Justin walked to the center of the room. He tapped a silver spoon against his champagne flute. The crystal rang out with a sharp, clear note that silenced the chatter. The room turned to face him. Megan stood by his side, slipping her arm through his, acting the part of the supportive wife. "Thank you all for coming tonight," Justin began. His voice was thick with emotion. Fake emotion. I had seen him use this same tone when he was 16 and crashed my car trying to explain how it wasn't his fault. "We have had a rough week," he continued, looking down at the floor and then up at the ceiling, as if asking God for strength. The accident was a wake-up call. Lying in that hospital bed, wondering if I would ever see my family again, I realized something. Life is short, and duty is everything. He paused for effect. The guests nodded solemnly. Dr. Stevens took a long sip of scotch. "My father," Justin said, turning to point at me. The room swiveled to look at the old man in the corner. I shrank back into the chair, making myself look smaller. "My father has always been the rock of this family," Justin went on. "But even rocks erode. We have all seen the changes lately. The confusion, the forgetfulness, the vulnerability. It breaks my heart to see the man who raised me struggle to remember what day it is." I bit the inside of my cheek. I knew exactly what day it was. It was the day I stopped being his father and started being his judge. "But I made a promise," Justin said, his voice rising with passion. "I promised myself that as long as I have breath in my body, my father will not suffer. I will take the burden off his shoulders. I will manage the heavy lifting so he can rest. It is a lot of responsibility, I know that. Managing the estate, the medical bills, the properties. It is a full-time job. But it is the least I can do." Megan squeezed his arm and looked at him with adoration. "You are a good son, Justin," she whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. Justin wiped a non-existent tear from his eye. "So tonight is not just a dinner. It is a transition. We are making it official. We are ensuring that Bill Foster is protected forever. To Dad." "To Bill," the room chorused, raising their glasses. I raised my water glass. My hand shook violently now, splashing water onto my pants. "Oh dear," I muttered. "Oh dear. Look at me." Megan was at my side in an instant. "It is okay, Bill," she cooed, wiping my leg with a cocktail napkin. Do not worry. Come on. Let's get you to the table. The sooner we sign, the sooner you can go to bed. You look exhausted. She gripped my arm. Her fingers dug into my bicep. It was not a gentle guide. It was a steerage. She marched me to the dining room table where Frank the notary was waiting. The room went quiet. The party was over. The business was beginning. I sat down in the hard wooden chair. The stack of papers in front of me was an inch thick. I looked at the cover page. Durable power of attorney. And underneath that transfer of deed. And underneath that revocation of all prior trusts and wills. They were thorough. They wanted everything. Justin pulled out a chair and sat next to me. He put a pen in my hand. It was a heavy, expensive fountain pen, one I had given him for his college graduation. The irony was suffocating. "Okay, Dad." Justin said, his voice low and urgent. "Just like we practiced. Sign by the yellow stickers. Frank here will witness it. And then you are done. No more worries." I looked at the pen. I looked at the paper. I felt the weight of 12 pairs of eyes on my back. I could feel Dr. Stevens leaning forward by the fireplace. I could feel Greg mentally calculating his commission check. I could feel Megan's breath on my neck. I held the pen over the paper. My hand trembled. I let the tip of the pen hover over the signature line. Ink bled out slightly into the air, waiting to stain the page. I have a question," I said, my voice raspy and weak. Justin stiffened. "What is it, Dad?" "We talked about this." "The house," I whispered. "What happens to the house? Your mother loved this house." Justin sighed, a sound of impatience masked as patience. "We keep the house, Dad, or we rent it out. Whatever is best for your care. Do not worry about the house, just sign." "But the garden," I persisted, playing for time. "The roses. Who will water the roses?" Megan leaned in. Her perfume was overpowering. "I will water the roses, Bill. I promise. I will come here every day and water them myself. Now sign the paper. The notary has to leave soon." It was a lie. She would bulldoze the roses the day after the sale. I looked at Frank the notary. "Sir," I said, looking him in the eye, "do you think I should sign this?" Frank looked panicked. He looked at Justin, then at his shoes. "Mr. Foster, if you understand the document and are signing of your own free will, then yes, it is a standard procedure. My own free will." The phrase hung in the air. I looked at the paper again. The words seemed to swim before my eyes. Not because I was confused, but because I was angry. This was the moment. This was the cliff edge. I gripped the pen tighter. I stopped the shaking in my hand. I made my hand perfectly still. I lowered the pen to the paper. The metal nib touched the fiber. "Hold on," I said clearly. Justin slammed his hand on the table. "What now, Dad? Jesus Christ, just sign it." I looked up at him. The confusion cleared from my face like fog burning off in the morning sun. I let the act drop just for a second. I let him see the auditor. "I need to read the fine print, son," I said. "You know what I always taught you. The devil is in the details." I saw a flicker of genuine fear in Justin's eyes. He saw something in my face that shouldn't be there. He saw clarity. "Bill," Megan hissed. "Stop stalling. You are tired. You are confused. Just sign your name and we will give you your medicine." My medicine. The sedative Dr. Stevens had prescribed illegally. I looked at the clock on the wall behind Justin's head. 8:14 p.m. The second hand swept past the 12. 8:15 p.m. I heard it. The faint sound of a car door slamming outside. Then another. Heavy boots on the pavement. Justin heard it too. He turned his head towards the front door. "Who is that?" he asked. "Did you order more food, Megan?" "No," Megan said. "Everyone is here." I smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a man who just balanced the ledger. I think I said, my voice booming in the silent room. "I think that is the only witness that actually matters." I put the pen down on the table with a definitive click. I pushed the papers away from me. "I am not signing," I said. Justin stood up, his face turning red. "You have to sign. You senile old fool, you have to sign. We have a deal." I leaned back in my chair and crossed my arms. The trembling was gone. The fear was gone. "I do not have a deal with you, Justin," I said calmly. "I have a trust, and you are not in it." The front doorbell rang. It was not a polite ring. It was a long, demanding press. Justin looked at the door. He looked at me, and for the first time in his life he realized he wasn't the one writing the story. "Answer the door, son," I said. "I think your ride is here." The tip of the fountain pen scratched against the heavy bond paper. It was a loud sound in the quiet room, like a knife scraping against bone. I felt the vibration of it travel up my arm and settle in my chest. I did not write William Foster. I did not write Bill. I wrote a sentence that I had been composing in my head since I hid in that closet. I wrote it in my clear, precise auditor's hand. I wrote, "I know everything, you scumbags." I capped the pen with a decisive click and slid the document across the mahogany table. Justin snatched the paper before it had even stopped moving. His greed made him clumsy. He knocked over his champagne flute in his haste, and the sparkling wine soaked into the tablecloth like a spreading bruise. He did not care. He held the document up to the light, his eyes wide with triumph. "Done," he shouted. His voice was cracked with relief. "It is finally done. We are safe." Megan clapped her hands together, a sharp, staccato sound that grated on my nerves. "Oh, thank God. Frank, notarize it quickly. We need to file this first thing in the morning." Justin looked down at the paper to admire his prize. He wanted to see my surrender in black and white. I watched his face. I watched the exact moment the words registered in his brain. His smile did not fade slowly. It vanished instantly, replaced by a look of utter confusion. He squinted. He blinked. He brought the paper closer to his face as if he could not believe what his eyes were telling him. "What is this?" he whispered. "What is—" What Megan asked, reaching for the bottle of champagne to pour another glass. "Did he sign on the wrong line?" "It does not matter. We can fix it." "No," Justin said, his voice rising in pitch. He did not sign his name." He looked up at me. The confusion in his eyes was replaced by a dawn of horror. He looked at me, and for the first time in 2 days, he did not see a confused old man. He saw his father. He saw the man who had caught him smoking behind the garage when he was 12. He saw the man who had made him return a stolen candy bar to the store. He saw the authority he thought he had stripped away. "Read it," I said. My voice was not raspy. It was not weak. It filled the room. Justin swallowed hard. The paper trembled in his hand. He wrote, "I know everything, you scumbags." The room went deathly silent. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Greg, the real estate agent, took a step back from the fireplace. Dr. Stevens lowered his glass of scotch, his hand freezing in midair. Megan laughed nervously. "What? That is ridiculous. He is having an episode. He is hallucinating. Give me the pen. I will guide his hand this time." She reached for me. Her hand, with its perfectly manicured red nails, came toward my arm. I stood up. I did not struggle out of the chair. I did not use the armrests for support. I stood up in one fluid, powerful motion. I grabbed the cane that was leaning against the table, the prop I had used to sell my frailty, and I threw it across the room. It clattered loudly against the wall, knocking a picture frame askew. The sound was like a gunshot. "Do not touch me," I said. My voice was low and dangerous. Megan froze. Her hand hovered in the air inches from my sleeve. She looked at the cane lying on the floor. She looked at me, standing tall, my shoulders squared, my eyes burning with a cold blue fire. "You think I am confused?" I asked, stepping around the table. "You think I am lost in a fog of dementia?" I walked over to the sideboard, where the remote control for the television lay. I picked it up. My hand was steady as a rock. "I am not confused, Megan. I am enlightened. I have spent the last 48 hours auditing this family, and I have found you bankrupt." "Bill, please," Dr. Stevens interceded, stepping forward with a fake, placating smile. "Let's calm down. This aggression is a symptom of the disease. We can give you something to help you relax." "Sit down, doctor," I snapped. I did not look at him. I kept my eyes on my son. "You will need a drink for what comes next." I pointed the remote at the massive 60-inch screen mounted above the fireplace. "You like reality television?" "Do not you, Megan?" I asked. "You always told me the Kardashians were your guilty pleasure." "Well, tonight we have a special premiere." I pressed the button. The screen flickered to life. I had cast the video from my phone earlier, synced to the cloud. The image was grainy at first, taken in low light, but the audio was crystal clear. It was the video I had recorded from the closet. The room gasped. On the screen, Megan was walking down the hallway of this very apartment. But she was not alone. She was with a man. And that man was not Justin. It was Gary, Justin's best friend. The man currently standing by the fireplace holding a shrimp cocktail. On the screen, Megan laughed, that cruel, throaty laugh. She wrapped her arms around Gary's neck. "We list the house on Tuesday," she said in the video. "Whatever is left, we split 50-50, just like we planned. And if Justin does not wake up, it makes things even easier. Life insurance pays double for accidental death." The video cut to black. The silence in the room was heavier than lead. Slowly, Justin turned his head. He looked at the black screen. Then he looked at Megan. And finally, he looked at Gary. Gary was backing away towards the door, his face the color of ash. "Justin, it is deepfake," he stammered. "It is AI. You know how good technology is these days." The old man made it up. Justin let out a sound that was half sob, half roar. He lunged at Gary. He tackled him into the coffee table, sending crystal bowls and brochures for nursing homes crashing to the floor. "Stop it!" I shouted. My voice cracked like a whip. Justin froze, his fist raised above Gary's face. "I am not done." I pressed the remote again. This time there was no video, just audio. It was the recording Agnes had made in the hospital room. The quality was tinny, but every word was distinct. Megan's voice filled the room. "Just get the old man to sign. We will throw him in shady pines. They sedate them at night. He will be a vegetable in 6 months." I watched Justin's face as he listened. He slid off Gary and sat on the floor amidst the broken glass. He looked up at Megan. She was shaking her head, crying silent, mascara-stained tears. "Justin the first." "I was just stressed," she pleaded. "I didn't mean it." "Enough," I said. I turned off the TV. I walked to the center of the room. I looked at the guests. The notary was packing his bag, trying to be invisible. Dr. Stevens was inching towards the patio door. "Nobody leaves," I said. "Sarah is blocking the driveway." I turned my attention back to my son. He was sitting on the floor looking up at me like a child who had broken a window. "You wanted to be my guardian, Justin," I asked softly. "You wanted to take responsibility for my life." I reached into my jacket pocket. I pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was the receipt from the electronic transfer I had made with Sarah Jenkins at 4 a.m. You think you are inheriting a fortune, son? You think you are getting this house, my retirement accounts, my savings. You borrowed $500,000 against that expectation, didn't you? Justin's eyes widened. How do you know about the loan? I am an auditor, Justin. I always find the debt. I unfolded the paper and held it up. Well, here is the current state of my finances. As of 4 o'clock this morning, I, William Foster, am legally destitute. I have transferred the deed of this house and every penny in my bank accounts into an irrevocable trust. I took a step closer to him. The beneficiary of the trust is the City Animal Shelter and the Victims Advocacy Fund. I left myself exactly $0. I dropped the paper. It floated down and landed on his lap. So here is the question, Justin. I am now a poor old man with no house, no money, and no assets. I am a burden, a liability, a mouth to feed. I leaned down, getting right in his face. Do you still want to be my guardian? Do you still want to take care of me now that I am worth nothing to you? Justin stared at the paper. He picked it up, his hands shaking so hard the paper rattled. He read the numbers. Transfer complete. Balance remaining $0. He looked at Megan. She had stopped crying. Her face had gone hard and cold. She realized the game was over. There was no money to steal, no house to sell, no loan to pay off. You crazy old bastard, she hissed. You gave it all away. To dogs. You gave my money to dogs. It was never your money, Megan, I said, standing up straight. It was my life's work, and I would rather see it buy kibble for stray puppies than buy vodka for you. Justin let out a low moan. The loan sharks, he whispered. They are going to kill me. They are going to break my legs. I looked down at him without pity. I felt a strange hollowness in my chest. I had expected to feel triumphant. Instead, I just felt tired. I had won the war, but I had lost my son. The boy I raised was gone, replaced by this terrified, greedy stranger on the floor. That sounds like a problem for a competent adult, I said, cold as ice. And according to your own petition, you are the competent one in this family. So figure it out. The front door opened. Sarah Jenkins walked in, followed by the 2 police officers. The air in the room shifted. The reality of the law had arrived. Gentlemen, Sarah said, her voice crisp and professional. I believe we have grounds for multiple arrests here. Fraud, conspiracy, elder abuse. And Dr. Stevens, I believe the medical board will be very interested in your creative writing skills regarding MRI scans. Dr. Stevens dropped his glass. It shattered on the floor, adding to the debris of their failed plot. I walked over to the window and looked out at the garden. It was dark, but I could imagine the roses my wife had planted. They would need watering tomorrow. I would have to ask the trustee for permission to live in my own house to act as a caretaker for the property I used to own. It was a strange new reality, but I was alive. I was free, and I was safe. I heard the sound of handcuffs clicking behind me. I heard Megan screaming that it was all Justin's idea. I heard Justin sobbing, calling out for me. Dad, please. Dad, do not let them take me. I did not turn around. I kept my eyes on the dark garden. Goodbye, Justin, I whispered to the glass. I was not his father anymore. I was the witness for the prosecution. The room erupted into chaos the moment the officers stepped through the doorframe. It was not the slow, cinematic chaos of the movies, but the sharp, ugly chaos of reality. Justin looked at the police and then he looked at me, and something inside him snapped. The desperation that had been simmering behind his eyes boiled over into pure, unadulterated rage. He realized in that split second that there was no money to pay his debts, and now there was no freedom to run from them. He was a trapped animal, and trapped animals only know how to do one thing. He lunged. He did not scream my name. He let out a guttural roar, a sound that didn't belong to a human being. He scrambled over the coffee table, kicking aside the crystal champagne flutes and the brochures for the nursing home. His hands were clawed, reaching for my throat. For a heartbeat, I saw the intent in his eyes. He wanted to hurt me. He wanted to silence the witness. He wanted to destroy the man who had outsmarted him. I did not move. I did not flinch. I stood my ground, leaning against the dining table, my arms still crossed. I watched him come at me with the detached curiosity of a man watching a car crash in slow motion. I had already grieved the loss of my son in that hospital hallway. The man attacking me now was just a stranger with a debt. Before his fingers could graze my jacket, the two officers moved with practiced efficiency. One of them, a large man with a buzz cut, tackled Justin mid-air. They hit the floor with a sickening thud that shook the floorboards. The air left Justin's lungs in a sharp wheeze. "Stay down," the officer shouted, pressing his knee into the small of Justin's back. "Hands behind your back. Do it now." Justin struggled, his face pressed against the expensive Persian rug he had mocked earlier. "Get off me!" he screamed, spitting saliva onto the wool. "That old man is crazy. He stole my money. He is the thief. Arrest him." I watched as the officer pulled Justin's wrists together. The sound of the handcuffs clicking shut was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It was final. It was the sound of a steel door closing on a life. Sarah Jenkins stepped forward into the center of the room. She looked like a Valkyrie in a business suit. She pointed a manicured finger at Dr. Stevens, who was trying to edge his way toward the patio door, his face pale and sweating. "Officers, secure that man," Sarah commanded. "That is Dr. Anthony Stevens. He is a flight risk." Stevens held up his hands, laughing nervously. "Now wait a minute. This is a misunderstanding. I am a medical professional. I was just here for a house call. I have patients waiting for me." The second officer moved to block the door. "Dr. Stevens, you are under arrest." "For what?" Stevens sputtered, his indignation rising. "For having a drink with a patient's family. You cannot arrest a doctor for being social. I will sue this department. I will have your badges." Sarah walked up to him. She pulled a folded document from her briefcase. It was the faxed copy of the MRI scan I had sent her. "You are not being arrested for being social, Doctor," Sarah said, her voice cutting through his bluster like a scalpel. "You are being arrested for federal health care fraud under Title 18, Section 1347. You are being arrested for conspiracy to commit wire fraud. And my personal favorite, you are being arrested for the falsification of medical records to facilitate the financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult." She held the paper up to his face. "We traced the serial number on the MRI scan you presented to Mr. Foster," she said. "That machine is located in a clinic in Cleveland, Ohio. It has been out of service for 6 months. And the brain in that image belongs to a 60-year-old woman who died in 2019. We found the original stock image on a medical student forum." Stevens's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. The arrogance drained out of him, leaving only the pathetic fear of a man who knows he has been caught. I didn't know," he stammered. "Justin gave me the file. He told me it was his father's. I was just trying to help." "Save it for the medical board," Sarah said coldly. "They are already processing the emergency suspension of your license. You will never practice medicine again. You will be lucky if you ever see the outside of a cell again." The officer spun Stevens around and cuffed him. The doctor began to weep soft, pathetic sobs that embarrassed everyone in the room. I looked over at the corner. Megan was standing by the fireplace, trembling. She looked at Justin on the floor, then at Stevens in cuffs. Her eyes darted around the room looking for an exit, looking for a lifeline. Her survival instinct kicked in, and it was ugly to watch. She pointed a shaking finger at her husband. It was him, she screamed. Her voice was shrill, hysterical. It was all Justin. He made me do it. He said he would leave me if I didn't help him. I told him it was wrong. I told him we shouldn't do it. Justin twisted his head up from the floor, his cheek matted with rug fibers. You lying witch, he spat. You planned the whole thing. You found the doctor. You printed the deed. Officer, arrest her too, Sarah said without looking up from her file. Megan Foster, conspiracy to commit grand larceny and attempted kidnapping. We have her on tape discussing the plan to involuntarily commit Mr. Foster to a state facility to facilitate the sale of his home. Kidnapping, Megan shrieked as the officer approached her. I didn't kidnap anyone. He is right here. He is fine. Constructive kidnapping, Sarah corrected her. Using fraudulent legal documents to strip a citizen of their freedom and transport them against their will is a federal crime. And since you plan to use the U.S. mail to file the fraudulent deed that adds mail fraud to the list, you are looking at 20 years, Megan. The officer grabbed Megan's wrist. She fought him, scratching at his arm, her nails tearing his uniform. Get off me, she screamed. My father is a judge. Do you know who I am? I know who you are, I said, speaking for the first time since the police entered. Everyone stopped. Even Megan stopped struggling to look at me. You are the woman who wanted to put me in a place where they sedate patients at night, I said quietly. You are the woman who wanted to turn me into a vegetable so you could buy a vacation home. I walked over to where she stood. I looked her in the eye. You are not a victim, Megan. You are the architect. And now you are going to live in a house with bars on the windows, just like you planned for me. The officer hauled her away. She began to scream profanities, cursing me, cursing Justin, cursing the world. The room was clearing out. The guests, Greg, the real estate agent, and Frank, the notary, were huddled in the corner, terrified. Sarah looked at them. You two, she said, don't leave town. The district attorney will be in touch for your witness statements. And Frank, if you ever notarize another document without verifying capacity, I will personally see to it that you are disbarred. They nodded vigorously, unable to speak. They scrambled out the front door past the police cars, leaving the wreckage of the party behind. I looked down at Justin. The police were hauling him up to his feet. He looked small, defeated. The arrogance was gone. The anger was gone. All that was left was fear. Dad, he whispered. His voice was broken. Dad, please. The loan sharks. If I go to jail, they will find me. They have guys on the inside. You have to bail me out. You have to help me. I am your son. I looked at him. I remembered the little boy holding my hand crossing the street. I remembered the teenager learning to drive. I searched my heart for that feeling of protection, that instinct to shield him from the consequences of his actions. It wasn't there. He had killed it. He had smothered it with a pillow of betrayal. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a $1 bill. I stepped forward and tucked it into the breast pocket of his expensive suit jacket. What is this? Justin asked, tears streaming down his face. Commissary money, I said. Use it to buy a phone card. Call someone who cares. The officer pushed him forward. Justin looked back at me one last time. His eyes were wide with the realization that he was truly alone. Dad. Wait, he cried as they dragged him out the door. Dad. I am sorry. The door slammed shut. The silence that followed was heavy and absolute. I stood in the middle of my living room. The lobster was cold on the plates. The champagne was flat in the glasses. My family was gone. Sarah Jenkins walked over to me. She closed her briefcase. The snap of the latches sounded like a period at the end of a long sentence. Are you okay, Bill? She asked gently. I looked around the room. I looked at the spot on the rug where my son had tried to attack me. I looked at the empty chair where my daughter-in-law had plotted my demise. I walked over to the window and looked out at the flashing blue lights of the police cars fading into the distance. I am alone, Sarah, I said. She came and stood beside me. Better to be alone in a house you own, Bill, than to be alone in a room they locked you in. I nodded. She was right. I was safe. The audit was closed. The fraud was exposed. The assets were secured. But as I looked at my reflection in the dark window, I didn't see a winner. I saw a survivor. And in a war like this, that was the only victory that mattered. 6 months have passed since the night the police cars lit up my driveway like a Christmas tree. The seasons have changed. The leaves on the oak trees in my front yard have turned from green to gold, and now they are falling one by one, just like the members of the conspiracy that tried to destroy me. The legal process was slow, ugly, and satisfying. I sat in the back of the courtroom every single day, not because I wanted to see my son suffer, but because I needed to see justice work. The trial was a spectacle of betrayal. The lovebirds who had plotted to steal my life turned on each other before the first gavel even fell. Megan took a plea deal so fast, it made the prosecutor's head spin. She claimed she was a victim of coercive control. She cried on the stand wearing a modest dress and no makeup, painting Justin as a mastermind who forced her to participate. It was a lie, of course. She was just as greedy as he was, but she was smarter. She got 5 years in a minimum security facility. Justin did not fare as well. The jury saw the text messages. They saw the loan shark contracts. They heard the recording of him wishing for my death to double the insurance payout. The judge, a stern woman who reminded me a little of Agnes, sentenced him to 12 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. When the sentence was read, Justin looked back at me. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked like a ghost. Yesterday I went to visit him. It was a cold morning, and the prison visiting room smelled of industrial cleaner and despair. I sat on a metal stool bolted to the floor and waited. When they brought him out, I almost didn't recognize him. He had lost 20 pounds. His expensive haircut was gone, replaced by a shaved head. The arrogance that used to radiate off him like heat was extinguished. He sat down on the other side of the thick glass and picked up the phone. "Hi, Dad," he said. His voice was flat. "Hello, Justin," I said. There was a long silence. He looked at my hands folded on the counter. "I am having a hard time in here, Dad," he said. "The food is terrible. The bed is hard. And I owe some guys in here for protection. It is not much. Just a few $100s. Could you put some money on my books, just until I get a job in the laundry?" I looked at him. Even in here, even after everything, he still saw me as a wallet. He still thought the solution to every problem was someone else's money. "No, Justin," I said. He blinked, surprised. "But Dad, it is dangerous in here." "It is dangerous everywhere, Justin," I said. "It was dangerous in my own house when you were plotting to drug me." I leaned closer to the glass. "I did not come here to give you money. I came here to give you the only thing I have left for you, advice." He slumped his shoulders. "I do not need advice. I need cash." "You need to listen," I said, my voice sharp. "For 32 years, I gave you everything. I paid for your college. I paid for your cars. I paid for your mistakes. And it made you weak. It made you a thief. Now you have 12 years. You have nothing but time." I stood up. "Use it, Justin. Get a job in the library. Scrub floors. Learn what it feels like to sweat for $1. It is the only way you will ever respect yourself. And when you get out, do not come looking for me." Justin's eyes widened. "Dad, what do you mean? You are my only family." "No," I said. "I am not. I was your victim, and I am done. Do not write to me. Do not call me. I have a new family now, a family that respects me." I hung up the phone. I didn't wait for him to respond. I didn't wait to see if he would cry or scream. I turned my back on the glass and walked out of the prison. The heavy steel doors slammed shut behind me, and for the first time in 6 months, I felt completely light. The weight of fatherhood, the weight of worry, it was all gone. I drove home with the windows down, breathing in the crisp autumn air. When I pulled into my driveway, the sun was setting, casting a warm orange glow over the house. My house. The house that was safe. I walked around to the back patio. The garden was blooming. The roses Megan had promised to water were thriving because I watered them myself every morning. Sitting at the patio table were 2 women. Agnes was wearing a bright floral dress, looking healthier and happier than I had ever seen her. She was pouring tea from a silver pot. Sarah Jenkins was there too, wearing jeans and a t-shirt, laughing at something Agnes had said. Bill Agnes called out, waving me over. "Hurry up! The tea is getting cold and Sarah brought those almond cookies you like." I walked over to them. These were not people bound to me by blood. They were bound to me by something stronger. Agnes, who had saved my life with a whisper in the dark. Sarah, who had used her brilliance to shield me from harm. They were my shield and my sword. I sat down. Sarah handed me a cookie. "How did it go?" she asked quietly. I took a bite of the cookie. It was sweet. "It is done," I said. I told him goodbye. Agnes reached over and patted my hand. Her grip was strong, warm, and reassuring. "Good," she said. "Now eat your cookie. We have plans for the trust." I was thinking we should expand the donation to the legal aid clinic. There are a lot of other bills out there who need a Sarah. I looked at them and smiled. A real smile. "That sounds like a wonderful idea," I said. I sipped my tea as the sun dipped below the horizon. I had lost a son, but I had found my dignity. I had found a purpose. And most importantly, I had found peace. My name is Bill Foster. I am 68 years old. I was almost a victim of the guardianship trap. But today I am a free man. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it serves as a warning and a lesson. Trust is earned, not inherited. And sometimes the family you choose is far more loyal than the family you are born into. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments if you have ever had to make a tough choice to protect yourself from a toxic family member. I read every single comment. Until next time, stay safe and keep your eyes open. Goodbye.